Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to Hilary, who's joining us from the UK, I believe. Is that right?
Yes, I'm from England. I'm in Derbyshire. It's evening here.
Well, we're very glad that we could coordinate this. But this is Hilary McKay, who is the author of The Time of Green Magic, which was our July book for the Lost in a Book theme. And we're just so happy to get to actually chat with you face to face. Avvai has come up with a bunch of great questions, so I will turn this over to her soon. Yeah, as she said, there's the chat function. If anybody has any questions, we will save a bit of time at the end if you want to ask Hilary your questions directly. But yeah, we have so much to talk about. This was such a wonderful book, so I will turn it over to Avvai.
Cool, yeah. So hello, if you guys have any questions about how to use Zoom, just send us a message in the chat. But I think a lot of you have participated before, so I feel like you guys know what's up.
Yeah, we found that the kids are the Zoom experts at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess, so Hilary, for anyone that hasn't read this book or have just been starting to read it, can you give us a bit of a summary for a summary of the book?
Well, it's a book about two families coming together, two halves of a family. There are three main characters, Abby and Max and Louis. Abby's father, Theo, marries the mother of the boys, and she suddenly finds herself not an only child anymore, but she's the middle child of a family, and they're not getting on very well at the beginning of the book. They move quite early on in the story to a strange house, this ivy-covered house. And Abby, to escape from all the commotion of family life, becomes a very great reader. She already is a reader, but she begins to read much more. And as she reads, she finds herself getting very engrossed in the stories, so engrossed, but it's almost like she's opened a doorway and she's really there, which is what books are really. They are doorways into different worlds. But Abby reads about a voyage on the ocean, for instance, and when she slips, she finds she puts her hand down, and when she brings it up again, it's wet with salty water. These things happen in this ivy-covered house. Books begin to come alive, and that's the magic. Yeah, so that's how it begins.
That's a beautiful description. It's very poetic, and I can totally see you narrating the book too as you speak. So can you tell us a little bit about the inspiration behind the book? Where did you get the idea? Why did you decide to write it? Yeah.
Well, I always write books because I've been doing that for about 30 years now. It's what I do. So that's why I decided to write it. But it's a patchwork book. This book is made of the books I read as a child. I read lots of old books as a child that I hardly understood, but I still read them. It's made of the ivy that is growing up the walls of this house. It's made of a film I saw. It was a French film about a cave system called the Chauvet cave system, which is basically about cave paintings that are 30,000 years old and very, very beautiful, mostly pictures of animals. And I put all those things together with the characters, and they made the background to the story.
Now, just before we got started with everybody, you were actually showing us a book about these caves.
I was showing you the book that I put in my book. Oh, here it is. It's a very big book about the Chauvet cave and the discovery of the world's oldest cave paintings. Can you see that?
Yes.
Can you see that those paintings are 30,000 years old and they look so modern? I'll open it up and show you a good page. Here is a page of horses. And I think they could have been drawn in the 21st century. You can see the movement, you can see the anatomy is very good. Whoever drew and painted these knew a lot about horses, and I've watched a lot of horses and seen how they hold their heads and how they look at each other. And the whole cave system is full of these wonderful animals. Some are extinct. We don't have them anymore, giant cave bears, and some we still have. And the film was in French and it was hard to follow the French, but it was absolutely fascinating. It was a whole world, very beautiful. So I used that, for a background.
That's so neat.
I took one of the animals and put him in my book.
Are these the same cave paintings as is this the same as like those famous, is this like it's in France? There's like one that's like open to the public that people can see. Is this the same?
Yes, I know. Yes, it's very similar. It's older than that one. I think that's 20,000 years. This is 30,000 years. And this was discovered after the one you're talking about. And they'd let people in and they realized that letting the public in and all of them breathing in and out, the cave paintings were beginning to degrade. So in these, nobody is allowed in. Okay. I think you can get a 20-minute pass if you're a scientist or a photographer or something. Mm-hmm. But and you go in sterile suits as if you were going to another planet. No, they're trying to keep them for another 30,000 years. They're quite right. They had the experience of one set of cave paintings degrading. They're on limestone, you see, which becomes damp very quickly. So, yeah, we're looking after them for us. But
yeah, I wonder how many other places like that there are just hidden away underground in the world. It's so neat.
It'd be lovely to see more.
Yeah, I love that this whole book came out from like this like one kind of experience, and you built a whole family, a whole world, like a magic, like a house that has like some magic to it. That's really neat. I like that. All right, let me just find my next question here. So yeah, you talked about the inspirations and where you got the idea from the book. I love when you say patchwork story, I could really see that. I love that all the different characters have like different things that they're going through and different storylines, and then the relationship between the siblings and the parents are like really enjoyable to read. There's like a lot of humor in the book too, which I really enjoyed. Did you have a particular character that you really enjoyed writing about?
No, not really. I started off with Abby. And Abby was interesting. She was really going through a lot of changes. She hadn't just moved into one family, but she'd also lost her granny who had moved back to Jamaica, and she was missing her very much indeed. So she'd always, she's not just gained a family, she'd lost somebody very important to her. And I could completely understand why she hid away in her books. Mm-hmm. But then, you're writing about Abby, and then Louis wanders in and he's all sticky and a bit cute. And you think, oh, Louis, I really want to look after you. What is the matter? And your mum's gone off, and what have you got in your bedroom, And suddenly you're in Louis's world. And while you're in Louis's bedroom, and he's tidying up and opening the doors and letting in his strange new visitor, upstairs Max is practicing French because he's fallen in love with a girl who is far too cool, far too cool, And so you dip in and out of characters. You get very fond of all of them. I get very fond of them.
Yeah, that's usually the case. But sometimes I like to find out if you have a preference. I personally loved Louis and I loved Max. I loved both their like vastly different experiences that they were going through. So yeah, that was very enjoyable to read. If you guys had any favorite characters, let us know in the comments. Like, we'd love to hear who you enjoyed reading about, or if you had like a favorite.
Yeah, I loved Abby. I loved sort of being with her while she was struggling with not only not being an only child, but suddenly living in a house full of boys. Like, that would just be such a wild adjustment. And Anne being, suddenly being thrust into the middle child dynamic. It was just, I loved it.
Yeah.
Yes, it was very fun. And she was the reader as well. So.
Yeah. And Theo was like, her father was such a great character, like him just like dealing with like having to take care of 3 kids without the mom anymore, and like dealing with like living in this new house and like jobs and like all, like I love when like parents in kids books are going through problems as well, because that's like very realistic. So I loved how you weaved all those like all the storylines.
I had to get rid of one of the adults, so
I appreciated that you let him be a good dad as well. I feel like a lot of the time in middle grade stories, you meet a lot of totally incompetent parents, but he was a great dad. And he, you know, his new wife, she's not forever gone. She's gone on a work trip. So
Yes.
he's suddenly a short-term single dad of 3, but he did a pretty great job, I thought, which
He
was
did his best. He
nice.
didn't always get it right, but he did try hard. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's like I love when stories do that, when the parents are they're just trying their best too. They're not perfect. They're trying. The scene where he's like painting the living room and trying to like figure out how, or like getting all the ashes out and cleaning it up is very funny. Like him just like kind of being frustrated about it all. We have a question from Eli about Iffin, which was another great character. Why did you decide to start Iffin small and then like have it growing throughout the book?
Well, partly because if Iffin had arrived at Louis's window at the size he was at the end of the book, I don't think Louis would have opened the window, to be honest. And I think Iffin also grew as Louis began to love him. The more Louis loved him and wanted him and needed him, the bigger Iffin grew. He was like a protector and a friend, but he got too big. You know, he got very big. But Louis still loved him very much indeed. But he had to grow. He grew as Louis's experiences grew and as the magic grew. So he had to grow, yeah.
Good question, Eli.
Yeah, that is a good question. So the house in the book was very much like its own character as well. There's like so many aspects to this house, and I love that like everyone had their own kind of like favorite part to the house. Like there was like the rocking horse room that Abby really liked. There was like the Narnia lamp, the ivy that Louis was kind of like interested in. Did you have like a favorite aspect in the house that you wrote? Like was there any one particular thing that was like, oh, like I really like this part? If I were to live in this house, this is what I would be like interested in.
Well, you see, if you're writing a house, you can put what you like in it. You don't have to bother about if it would really grow or if you can afford it. You know, if you want a big rocking horse and it's your house and you've invented it, you can have it. So I pretty much liked the whole house, and I like old houses. I've lived in old houses, and they're interesting to live in. I lived in a cottage, and it was 300 and more than 300 years old, and you knew that so many lives had passed through and left their shadows behind, and that was pretty good. So
yeah, nice. I really liked that's a good answer. I was trying to think if I really liked Abby's room. I liked that she had like the nook with the books in it and stuff, and yeah. My next question is, so like I mentioned before, you had all the siblings kind of like dealing with their own things. Like Max was dealing with losing a friend and discovering love for the first time. Louis was dealing with like his mother being gone, and also like dealing with Iffin and like this creature that like no one knew about. So why did you decide to like include all these different stages of childhood and growing up? And then how did you manage to like write all these different storylines while like creating kind of like a cohesive like narrative? Can you tell us the like process of writing the book, I guess?
Well, I had all different ages because families are all different ages, you know, and a family in a home is everybody's on their own journey, and their journeys overlap with each other and they go off in different directions as they have different experiences at school and in the wider world or in their bedrooms if they're Louis, you know. So you just have to do that. Not everybody is the same age. And I find that I've written a lot of books. So I've had a lot of practice. And I have a family of my own, and I grew up in a large family. So I can sort of see how it works, I suppose. I've learned to do that. It hasn't been too difficult, really.
Yeah. Some of the feedback that we've been getting from readers is that it's a good book to read out loud to like to their kids that are like multiple ages, because like the younger kids can like relate to like Louis and like what he's going through, and that some of the older kids can like relate to Max, and like, and so it's like it is like a really good book for like 8 to 12-year-olds, because you kind of cover all the different stages of growing and learning. So
yeah, and I hope it's not too boring for the parents, because I tried to see the parents' point of view as well.
I don't think it's too boring for the parents.
no,
I don't have kids, but I'm parent age, so I loved it.
I loved it too. And there's relatable scenes for parents too, like Theo like dealing with all the adult stuff that he has to deal with.
Yeah, he just has to get them to school in the mornings. That is hard enough sometimes.
Absolutely.
Although don't we wish? I was going to say school in the mornings. I wish it was back again, but anyway. Are your children at school in America? No.
We're in Canada, so we're in a different situation than the States. But I know even in Vancouver, they're pushing the start date of in-person school. It's all.
Yeah, maybe some of you guys that are watching can tell us if you're going back to school or not soon, and what's happening. Because yeah, it's a little bit different for us up here.
Yeah.
So I guess like, is there a book that, so Abby gets lost in several different books while she's in the book. Is there a book that you would love to get lost in, and is there a book that you would never ever want to find yourself in?
Well, there are lots of books I would like to get lost in. I have been reading about Charles Darwin's Voyage of the Beagle at the moment, because we have been in lockdown, and I seem to have been in this small location for years and years and years, and I would so much like to get on a ship and sail around the whole world for 4 years and see all the new places. I would like to get lost in that book. But there are lots of books. Books I wouldn't like to get lost in. Well, if I don't like a book, I usually don't finish reading it. But, well, I don't, because there are so many books. You don't have to read them all. No, it's true. I was thinking a funny book I wouldn't like to get lost in is Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I think it would have smelt so sweet and been so sticky. I really would hate to be in that book. Very unattractive at all. And I used Anne Frank's diary in this book, and that is another book I've been thinking about these lockdown days, because I grumble and I can walk outside and I can be as noisy as I like, and I can have a good moan, and I can switch on the news and see what is happening, but what we're told is happening. It's more like it. But Anne was just stuck there in those small rooms, and she had to grow up there, and she didn't know when it was going to end. And yet she wrote a book of such hope and such courage. I have been thinking about that. I wouldn't like to be there, but I would love to have met her. Yeah. So those are my two not books. One sticky, one frightening. Yeah. What about you?
Well, I like that you are reading the Darwin book about his voyage on the Beagle. That would be exciting to get lost in. Like discovering, or like kind of, like him discovering things for the first time and stumbling upon different islands and different animals. That'd be very exciting. But I read a graphic novel recently about Darwin's voyage, and it seemed like he just had such a hard time. He was seasick for the entire time, and he was just like never got used to being on a boat, and he like encountered storms and all of that crazy things, and so maybe that I wouldn't want to experience. But
I never thought about the seasickness.
Yeah,
I just thought it would be really nice to be out there on the ocean.
Yes, when you're on land,
plastic-free ocean as well.
On the Galapagos.
Yeah.
Sally, I would hate to get lost in like a pirate story or something. I think that would just be
that would be
so dangerous and so dirty. It's exciting to read about, that's for sure. Actually, suddenly finding yourself there would be a bit too much of an adventure for me. Yeah.
Is there any books that you wouldn't want to get lost in?
That I would want to get lost in?
You wouldn't.
That must be hundreds.
I wouldn't want to get lost in. I've been rereading the Nevermore series, and I think that I would like to get lost in. I think it would be very cool to suddenly find yourself in a fantasy land where there's just like so many things different from our world and just magic everywhere. As long as I could get out again at some point, I think I would love to get lost.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's finding the way out again, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone watching, if you have books that you would love to get lost in or hate to get lost in, we would love to know. You can put those in the comments.
And we've had some comments of people, some of them are doing online school, and some of them aren't going into school like just yet in person. So yeah, the world is kind of chaotic. We have no idea what's going to happen. Keeps changing every 2 days. So yeah. Madeline says she'd love to get lost in Harry Potter, which I think I would agree with. Yeah.
Yes, I think that's quite reasonable.
There'd be so much to discover in Harry Potter, a whole world. Yeah. Okay, so I know a lot of people who tune into these chats want to be writers when they grow up, or maybe they're currently writing as well. Do you have any advice for young writers, since you have such a vast experience of writing books?
Well, the first thing to do is to read lots of books, and not just to read the books that you enjoy and you think, well, that's exactly the sort of book I like to read because I've read a book like that before. Read a book that isn't exactly the sort of book you like to read. If you read a lot of fiction, try reading some non-fiction, you know? And if you're interested in sciences, maybe you should read some history books, you know? Try and broaden it like you would travel to lots of different countries to get lots of experience. You can do it through books just the same. So I would say that. People say carry a notebook and write things down, but I never bother, and I've managed for 30 years, so good idea, but it's, oh, that's my dog.
Oh.
That's Meggie, my dog. She seems to be wandering around outside. If horses go past, she gets very excited. What else was I talking about? Oh, if you want to be a writer. The other thing you can do is listen to people, because I have seldom met a person who hasn't, if you encourage them a little bit, got a story to tell. People say, where do you get your ideas from? There are ideas everywhere. Everybody has got at least one story. They will say, well, I could tell you about a time, you know, you could ask a relation you don't see very often, and they would tell you a story. You can wait in line and somebody will tell you a story. Stories everywhere. Listen to them and listen to the patterns that people use when they speak. Some people speak in very short sentences. Some people speak in questions all the time. They seem to be always saying, do you get that? Do you understand? You know? And when you write them down, when you reproduce them, you start to get a character building. So I think that's an important thing. Listen to people, read lots of books, read outside your comfort zone. And I wouldn't bother taking notes. I don't bother taking notes. Keep your ears going. That's all you need to do. And it's hard to be a writer. People think it's hard to write a book. It's not. You don't have to write a whole book. You just have to write the first page. And writing is like playing an instrument or playing tennis, or you have to practice it, you know, write a note to a friend, something like that. But that's the sort of thing. Get in practice, get familiar with words, use them like a painter uses paints. Find words you like to use, you know. It's easy and it's fun, and it doesn't have to be daunting. It's just an extension of reading, writing is. When you're reading, you're creative. You know, you've only got black and white, 26 characters, pictures if you're lucky. And yet you can see a world. You're creating, you're joining in with the writer. So, you know, not a big jump. What do you think?
That's very good advice. The advice of listening to patterns when people speak is something I've never heard before, but something I've definitely noticed when I was reading your book, how every character had like a different way of speaking. And I, like when I'm reading, it's usually my voice in my head reading the book, but with this book, I had to like read it in like different accents or different voices to kind of like make sure that I'm getting like the tone of voice for each character. So yeah, I really like that advice. That's good.
Listening's always good advice, but I've never heard an author use it as writing advice. I think that's fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well,
And I think writing is so daunting and so hard. So it's nice to hear an author say that it's not so hard. It's an extension of reading, which I like. I don't think I've ever thought of writing as an extension of reading, but it seems so obvious when you state it like that. So yeah, something to think about. Eli says that, or Ellie, sorry, says to answer one of the questions that we asked before, that they would like to get lost in Heidi. I don't think I've ever read Heidi before. I've definitely watched the movie.
I've read it. It's a wonderful place to get lost in the Swiss Alps. It would be gorgeous, wouldn't it? What a good idea. Yeah. Yeah.
And Michaela, she would hate to get lost in a math book.
Would she? I'll tell my husband, he's teaching maths online. He spends hours and hours every day. He's a maths teacher. And this house, you would get lost in maths books. They're everywhere in great piles. But anyway.
I would hope that if I got lost in a math book, I would understand how to do math more than like me just like staring at math problems. So maybe there could be like some benefits of getting lost in a math book.
Fully immersed in the world of math.
Yeah. Well, I have been. I have found better books to be immersed in. But anyway, there we are, maths. My husband is writing a maths book. It may happen. I may get lost in a maths. I may inadvertently read it, and get stuck. That would be awful.
I had a question that I just thought of right now. Could you explain more about the concept of green magic, like the title of the book, and like this green magic that's like weaved throughout the story, and how that differs from, like, I know in one chapter of the book you talk about practical magic and how the house coming together was a little bit of a practical magic, but you make a difference between green magic and just like practical magic. Can you speak to that? Can you like explain to us a little bit more about it, I guess?
Well, that's a very hard question. The green magic in the book is really the magic of green growing living things all around you. I'm lucky I live in a place, well, it's not so good in winter, but in summertime there is greenness everywhere. There are great forests I can walk in, and they are magical, eerie places, especially when I'm on my own or just there with Meg, wherever she is, Meg the dog. You go along and you hear a crackle behind you. You don't know what it is. You can imagine what it is a bit. And there are shadows. Or all the birds rise up and they're frightened of something you can't see. That's the green magic, the sort of power in growing things that will save us all, I believe. We need these things. We need the ivy growing up the walls, pumping out oxygen, filtering out the dust. It's helpful, and I hope when these days are over, we're going to say, we need some green magic in this world. We need to clean it up, and we need to plant a few plants and get the trees there again. That was the green magic I used. It's a very positive growing sort of magic, I think. And that's about all the magic in the book. That and the magic of reading, which is a true magic. And I don't think there are many people who haven't read a book that's frightened them. They think, I'm not going to bed with that in the room, it's going back in the kitchen. Well, I've done that. Or read a book and said, look, they're all having pizza. I would really like pizza right now. I think there's a lot of power in books and reading.
Mm-hmm. I like that. I like that a lot. I like the concept of green magic because it seems like tangible and real. Like it's so accessible because it's all around us. Like it's
all around us. Yes, we can all have a point or two about.
Yeah, we just have to be like tuned into it a bit more to be able to like recognize it. But yeah, I like that a lot. We have some more answers to where different books that people would like to get lost in. Eli says They would like to get lost in the incorrigible. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Children of Ashton Place. I've never read that book. Have you read that, Sally?
No, I haven't. I'll have to look that one up.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Any more places? Where else are we getting lost?
Yeah.
And also in the Secret Garden. Ellie would like to get lost in the Secret Garden. That would be wonderful.
That would be lovely, wouldn't it? Yes. With Mary and Dickon and all the animals. I hope it would be there. That would be lovely.
Perfect. So I guess my final question for you, Hilary, is do you have any book recommendations that you loved as a kid, or any newer middle grade books that you've been reading recently that you'd like to recommend to some of our viewers?
Well, I do actually. There is a book I'm going to recommend, one from when I was a kid. This is a writer called, can you see that? Called Joan Aiken. She wrote some books set in America. There's a brilliant one set in Nantucket, for instance. And they're funny, magical, inventive, wild adventure stories that have really stood the test of time. This is a very recent republishing of them, but they were about when I was a kid, and I loved for Joan Aiken stories. So that's one from my childhood. Now, I'm really lucky. I get sent lots of books to review or have a look at. This is one that came very recently. This isn't even a book. This is called A Page Proof. It's a book before it's published. It's called The Wild Way Home, and it's a time slip adventure by an Irish writer, where the character is partly in the modern world and partly in the Stone Age world. And it's a beautiful family story set in Ireland. Very nice. Yep, very good fun. This is Catherine Rundle.
Oh, yeah.
Who, yeah.
Love her. We have 2 of her books for our box.
You have? Which ones? I also have the proof of her most recent one set in New York.
Yeah, we've included The Good Thieves and The Explorer.
Have you?
Lovely. Yeah.
Well, I like Rooftoppers as well. But anyway, you can't put them all in. So there's I told you to read around your comfort zone. I should have said read books in translation. This is a children's story I was sent earlier this year called Lampy and the Children of the Sea, and it's a translation from a Dutch story.
Oh.
Winning awards like mad because it is superb. It's lyrical, it's mystical, it's adventurous, it's a gorgeous book, and it's illustrated by the writer. When I first got it, I said, credit the illustrator because the illustrations are gorgeous. And they said, the illustrator is the writer, so she's done both, and it's a really lovely book. Those are some books I would recommend. Yeah.
Do you have those are a great collection. You have like some old classics and some new books there. Cool. Yeah. So if anyone has any questions for Hilary, you can leave it in the chat box, or you can come, you can ask Hilary yourself. But yeah, we'll give you like a few minutes to come up with those questions.
I have a, oh no, I think we've looked at these questions, have we? I have a list of questions from Eli.
Sending you questions directly?
Well, they're on the side of my screen.
Oh, yeah.
I think sometimes people
Eli and Ellie
to the whole screen. So if there's any we've missed, we'd love to, you can read those aloud.
Yeah.
No, I don't think we have missed any.
Okay. Are you working on anything new at the moment that you are able to share with us? Or are you just living life in quarantine?
No, I'm always writing a book. I haven't not been writing a book for a long time because I haven't yet made enough money to stop, which would be nice. So I'm writing on a book. I wrote a book called The Skylux War.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm writing the sequel to that now.
Oh, wonderful.
I've been seeing, I've been wanting to pick up The Skylux War. I've had it on hold at the library. I've heard just beautiful things about it. So I'm excited to dive into that.
I hope you enjoy it if you ever get around to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm writing the sequel now, which is, I was just counting up this afternoon and I thought this book is getting out of hand. It's got 27 main characters, you know. Nice.
The editors for you hand it off to them and they can So if you open up the book here, there's a great long list of other books by you. Are all of your books for this age group, or have you written, higher and lower age groups as well? I'm not sure.
Oh, I've written so many books that aren't published in America because they're like school readers for British schools or picture books. But they were published in America, actually. I used to do quite a few when my children were little, I wrote picture books, and as they grew older, I wrote school readers, and then, they stopped reading books and got into punk rock and stuff like that, so I just didn't talk to them anymore. But yeah, I've written across quite an age range, maybe from 4-year-olds up to 14, 15, that sort of age range. And last time I counted, there were nearly 100, so.
That's very impressive.
How long does it take, or like how long did it take for you to write The Time of Green Magic?
It took about a year.
Okay.
But I wouldn't have been writing just that book at one time. I would have been writing that and editing Skylux, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
And the one that I'm writing now, it's going to be at least 2 years because the research took a long time to do.
Oh.
I was supposed to go to Berlin, but then we had a pandemic, so I couldn't do that. But, slowed it all down. But yeah.
So Ellie is asking, where is your favorite place to write?
Well, I used to have a very nice study, but it's been stolen off me and turned into a workroom for teachers to teach him from home. So at the moment, I'm in our conservatory. I could turn the camera. You could see who's just come in the door.
Oh, hello.
I have him there to keep me company. Garden is outside. I think it's going to be pretty cold in winter time, but we'll see what happens. I can write anywhere, but it's quiet really, actually. I write a lot in libraries when the libraries are open, but at the moment they're not.
And Michaela is asking, how old are your kids now?
They are very old. They're ancient. They are 27 and 23.
Ancient.
Yeah.
Very ancient.
Much too old to read.
What kind of dog is Meg?
She's a border collie. If I could get her in, if you like, I could find her.
We always love to meet dogs. Yeah, why not?
Do you seriously want my dog? I can shout my dog.
Sure, yeah.
Okay, give me a minute.
It's exciting.
Always
I love when there's special guest appearances.
She's guarding the back gate, I'm told, but we're going to go and get her.
Oh, that's okay. Well, I'm sure she's...
Are we out of time, or do you have more questions?
We are about at time. So last chance. If anyone has any more questions, now is your last call for questions. But until then, Hilary, thank you so much for joining us and taking an evening away to do this. It was really lovely to get to actually.
It's really lovely to talk to you. It's really lovely to talk to anybody at the moment, but it's talk to you in Vancouver, which is a gorgeous place. I've been there.
Oh, wonderful! Yeah, it really shines in August. It's one of its prettiest months.
Maggie, look who's coming. Come here. Oh, let's say hello to you. Wow. There you are.
Oh, hi. Just get the little ears poking across the screen.
Oh,
hello. What a good girl. Girl or boy? Girl.
Girl, yes.
Yes. Well, thank you for that. Go look for horses again. The viewers also loved Meg. Lots of so cutes. And Eli is saying, thank you. I really liked your book, especially Iffin. I 100% agree. I just loved this book so much, like right from, the intro, right, where you just, with the waves and the salt and you know, you knew you were in for something pretty special right from the get-go, I think. So we were so happy that we could include the book in the box.
Well, I was so pleased you chose it. It was a real honor. It was lovely. Delighted. Never happened to me before, so thank you very much.
Very, very welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, we can't wait to read part 2 of Skylux. We just, yeah. Don't rush, but we're very excited for it.
Next year.
Okay.
Hopefully.
All right. Well, I think we are going to wrap it up there, guys. Thank you all for sticking with us for the last 40 minutes. And we'll see you again next month for our next author chat.